we pride ourselves as being really high welfare and looking after our pets really well and being a nation of animal lovers. But we've let this kind of secret, unwanted thing enter our homes, and it's right there, and we've accepted it's completely normal, and we've taken an animal and changed the way it looks to suit our needs.
Welcome to Just a Dog Podcast, the podcast for thoughtful dog lovers and guardians. I am your host, Nadine. Today I'm speaking with Marisa Heath. Marisa has spent more than 15 years working inside Parliament to improve the lives of dogs in the UK. She runs the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Animal Welfare and helps to shape laws on breeding, licensing, sentience and more. She also leads the Canine and Feline sector group, bringing together Battersea, Dogs Trust, the RSPCA, the Kennel Club and others to advise the government. Marisa is the author of A Healthier Future for Pedigree Dogs and the co-founder of the Innate Health Assessment tool. The tool helps people understand what a physically healthy dog should look like when choosing a puppy or deciding which dogs to breed from. It focuses on simple things that we can see, like whether a dog can breathe, move, or play with ease. And you would think that it would be easy to recognize a healthy dog, but breeding has shifted so far from the dog's natural form that many unhealthy features now appear normal to us. We unpack this in the episode. This conversation matters because many dogs live with health struggles that go completely unnoticed, all because of how they've been bred. The IHA tool gives us a clearer way to notice these signs and make kinder choices. Marisa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Glad to be here.
I'd love to get started by learning a little bit more about your younger years. Did you grow up with dogs?
I grew up in Indonesia for the first part of my life, lots of stray dogs. We had two dogs, one that was a rescue and one that my parents had bought. And being a foreigner in a different country like that, animals were the kind of connection I had. They were the companions. And so I was really close to the dogs then, and I was always attracted. My parents would be like, don't go near the stray dogs, because rabies was an issue in Indonesia. And I actually got bitten when I was a kid, but I've got no kind of issue about approaching any dog now. It didn't have any real impact on me, even though I got whisked off to the rabies unit and all of that kind of thing, because it was a stray dog. So my experiences haven't always been perfect with them, but I've always just loved them and wanted to be around dogs and all animals.
Wonderful. Where in Indonesia was that?
So a place called Bandung, which is just outside Jakarta. It's probably about an hour out of Jakarta. My father was working there. And as I said, there's just, animals everywhere. It's just normal to be in the villages and to have goats around you, cows, chickens walking around, all of that kind of thing. So I was just, animals were part of the community.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I only recently learned that something like 80% of dogs around the world are actually free roaming.
Yeah, no, it's huge. Yeah.
Huge number. Yeah. So when I was doing some research, I learned that you were a model. Is that correct? That's so fascinating. How do you go from being a model to becoming a politician and welfare advocate and policymaker and consultant?
Well, I've always been driven by wanting to tackle unfairness. It's something that really, really bothers me. So for example, seeing animals mistreated or those that are vulnerable, treated badly, bullied, all of that kind of thing is something that's always really driven me. Modeling's an interesting one because it wasn't based on how hard you worked. It was based on sort of who you knew, a bit of luck, timing, all of this kind of thing. So there were so many girls, particularly the girls from South America and Russia and Eastern European countries, that were being sent out to model to save their families, to take money back home and things. And the way it worked wasn't based on how hard they worked or even how beautiful they were. It was all sorts of other things. So it was an industry that was sort of marked a bit by unfairness, I think. I like kind of meritocracy, where if you work and you put the effort in things, you get the reward back. So I think that drove me. So I always had that kind of thing inside me that I wanted to change stuff. And modelling was a sort of escape from a small town in Hampshire that I went to after Indonesia and went to school in, and a way to get out there into the bigger world. And because of modelling, I travelled extensively. I mean, you live in Paris and Milan and New York and Tokyo, and then you travel, I'd go to places like Marrakesh for photo shoots and things like that. So I got to see a lot of what was going on in the world. And that just opened my mind up to thinking, well, actually, most things are politics, legislation, rules that we live by. Everything we do is touched by politics. So that's what drove my interest. And I I wanted to get out of modelling quite quickly because I found it, very superficial, basically. Looking back on it, I think to myself, I was an idiot. I was driven by this kind of youthful, like, oh, this is unfair, or you shouldn't have to do this, shouldn't have to do that. And actually, it gives massive opportunities. But at the time, I wanted to get out. So I went to university and studied English and then did international relations and politics and got elected locally at that point. I'm very much driven by the Iraq war, actually, because that, again, to me was like this massive injustice. I felt it was an illegal war at the time, and I still do. There's lots of challenge around that, but that's how I felt about it. And that drove me. And the animal welfare stuff is just the fundamental baseline of, I think, that we all have a duty to look after the vulnerable in the world. That should be the sort of topmost priority.
Completely agree with you. When I think about the things that drive us and move us forward as individuals, obviously for you, it's, unfairness, injustice. I tend to think that those things are driven by a core inner wound. And I was wondering where in your life you might have experienced injustice yourself.
I think we all do at some point in our life. I think there's always something that's unfair. Someone else gets a promotion when you've worked harder. As a woman, there is sort of natural injustice sometimes in the work environment, in getting your voice heard, all of those sorts of things. But I guess growing up in Indonesia, you saw a real stark contrast. So as expats, obviously we were privileged. We were the white expats over there being paid to do jobs. My dad was sent over by the government at the time. But then you had this massive expanse of poverty and people who had absolutely nothing, and a lot of cruelty and things going on that you saw. It was out there. It wasn't really covered up. So that immediately sort of made me see the difference and the injustice and the inequality. So I think that's what really started it. But, there's lots of examples of things where I have, for example, done a really big piece of work for pro bono for free, and somebody else has gone off with the glory and credit for it. And I think probably lots of us have examples of that happening.
Yeah. And so having that experience as a foreign person is really interesting how you had that level of self-awareness so early on.
Some people just have this connection. It's empathy at the end of the day, isn't it? And I don't think age, I see it a bit in my daughter already. She's 7, and from age 4, she was like, oh, why are we eating animals? And questioning all these kind of things. Why are people wearing fur? The animal needs the fur and things. So I think it's naturally in us, and probably that environment stirred it up much more for me. Yeah, I just feel really strongly. I hate cruelty. I'm driven by wanting to tackle it. I feel personal, like responsibility and duty to do something about it.
So Indonesia, Hampshire, and then at what stage did you adopt, rescue, or buy your first dog?
So we'd already we had a stray dog living with us in Indonesia called Lady. So we'd already sort of made that move. But actually, it was a horse that changed my feelings about animals even more, drove it even more. When I was really, really young, my parents were having a very challenging relationship, and my escape was this rescue pony that they'd allowed us to have. And at that time, it was about £80 or something a month to keep this horse on livery down the road, and I could walk there. And literally after school and in the morning, I walked there and did it myself and looked after this pony, groomed her. She was a nightmare to ride, really difficult, complex pony, probably looking back at it in pain, back pain, tooth pain, all of this kind of thing. But when you're young and people aren't telling you that, you don't know it. There's loads of horses that are being ridden or looked after in probably not a great way. But this pony was my life. I absolutely adored her. And that just got me interested in being around animals all the time. So we rescued cats then when I was like 13, 14. We had rescue cats in with us. I didn't get my own dog until I was, I think, 25. I got my first dog. And just, I loved this dog. She was called Maggie. I just took her absolutely everywhere. I may as well have been in a kind of committee. My dogs get more attention than my partner in the house. So my partner knows that the dog comes first by miles. That's just the way it works. So we've always had animals, and I've always been like, when I was a kid, I found probably not the right thing to do but I found a baby magpie in the woods that had, was alone, couldn't see its mum, couldn't find its nest. So I took it home, didn't tell my parents, made it a nest in my wardrobe and kept it there for ages until I sort of realised that you needed to set these things free, and that wasn't the right way to do it. But I thought I was doing the right thing, as we often do. I had a wood pigeon I rescued from the stables that ended up living on my windowsill for about 2 or 3 years. It used to come in my bedroom, hang out with me, and then go off out the windowsill and things. So I was always finding things to rescue and look after.
How wonderful. What was your impression of dogs in Indonesia, and how did that shift over time when you came to the UK?
Dogs are treated like dirt in a lot of countries. There's a lot of stray dogs and they're just a nuisance. That doesn't mean all of the people dislike dogs. They don't. Some of them really connect with them and things, but largely they're a nuisance. You'd see dogs dragging their back legs because they've been hit by a car, and they'd be going around like that for days and weeks, in fact, with no one doing anything about it. There was a lot of abuse of dogs, say beating of them, poisoning. Poisoning happens a lot, really slow death for dogs. So there was no welfare legislation or protection of animals at all in places like that. And the way they can be treated is absolutely appalling. And, I've spent time in abattoirs and breeding facilities, all sorts of different places. So I understand what I'm talking about. But some of the things, we used to go to the markets where they'd be selling puppies, not for pets, for food. That's the cultural difference out there. So sort of seeing all that thing, I suppose I came back to the UK and at least we had a baseline of animal protection. What was it, 1800s or something, that the founder of the RSPCA had got legislation in and things saying we need to recognise the importance of animals. So we had already gone further than a lot of these countries for all sorts of reasons, economic, social. But I did think to myself, it's not enough. We can do more. And also, if we can get it right here, how can we transport that internationally to create better protection? For me, I was part of the work on the Animal Sentience Act, recognising that animals are sentient, but I've always known that. That's always been. It's my belief they've got emotions, they feel pain, they have lives, they want to live, they want to survive. And I think we've got a duty as this sort of all-powerful race of human being to protect them. And I'm not putting it all in the same category, don't get me wrong, but same as we need to look after disabled people, elderly people, anyone who's vulnerable in our society, those who are suffering from severe mental health, that's our duty to protect and look after them.
100%. When you had your own dog at first, was it a puppy?
No, it was about a year or so, a kind of German shepherdy, mongrel-y kind of street dog, basically. But we also had this dog, Chinese Chow or something like that, because they were breeding dogs for expats and things, sort of fancier dogs. And I don't know much about the breed, but it was this black and white thing with quite a flat nose. Not as flat
Yes.
as they are nowadays, but still looking back on it, it wouldn't have been the dog that I would have chosen. He was called Smut, which means little ant in Indonesian. A really sweet dog. But we all connected probably more to the street dogs. It just had something about it. Just some dogs. I love all dogs, but some dogs just get you a bit more than others. My current dog is a good example of that.
And then having the experience of having your own dog, did you have any preconceived ideas about what it took to care for your dog? Did anything change? Did that reveal anything about some inherited ideas, maybe from Indonesia?
Well, it's slightly different in Indonesia because in the UK, we have to keep our dogs contained. We should be, we don't let them sort of just run down the streets, do we? Because they get hit by a car and squashed. Whereas in Indonesia, the dogs come and go as they please. So this dog knew it lived with us, but it had its own autonomy, which is really interesting because I've been thinking a lot about this. With my own dog now, I thought to myself the other day, I love that dog and I'll do anything for it. But at the end of the day, I'm the master and controller. I decide when she gets fed, when she gets walked, when she goes to bed, when she's allowed on the sofa, all of these things, she's responding. And I that sat a bit uncomfortably with me because I want her to be sort of free to do what she wants to do. And don't get me wrong, she'll toss her off my bed or off the sofa when she's fed up with me. She'll go in the garden when she feels like it, all of that kind of thing. But nonetheless, we control and look after our dogs in situations like this, whereas in Indonesia, they did their own thing. And one wonders, you can question that and go, what's happier, a street dog or a pet dog? No, you'd kind of go, well, a street dog must have a miserable life because it's scavenging for food and things. But dogs do quite like sort of moving around and looking at things and inquiring. They don't want to be shut in a kitchen all day. And that is unfortunately what happens to quite a lot of dogs.
Yes, a lot of them. I was just reading this book. Actually, the conversation I had earlier today was with Jessica Pierce, who authored the book. I think it's called Unleash Your Dog, something like that. And in this book, they had statistics that completely, it just threw me. How many dogs get walked? How many dogs get walked once a day for half an hour? How many dogs get walked for 2 hours a day? That kind of thing. And unfortunately, the percentages were so low. The percentage of dogs who don't ever get walked was so high. And I was on a walk when I was listening to it. It's shocking.
I guess there's two reasons for that. One, time shortage from people who might be leaving for work at 9 o'clock and getting back at 5 and it's pitch black now. whatever, or they're just doing other things. Secondly, the type of dogs they're getting. And that will go to the extreme health issues and the fact that some dogs struggle to walk.
Absolutely. Well, let's get straight into that then. The reason why I wanted to talk to you was about the Innate Health Assessment tool. Would love for people to understand a bit more about how that came about, what it is.
Yeah. 2009, I worked in defence in Parliament first, and then this role came up where it was for a part-time person to run what's called the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Animal Welfare. And I was like, oh, that's quite a sort of nerve-wracking thing to do, to go part-time on a job that probably doesn't pay that much. Realistically, it doesn't. Whereas if I'd stayed in the defence industry, I could be working for a big defence company earning quite a lot of money. But animal welfare was my passion. And I thought to myself, you know what, that gives me the freedom to possibly do other things and be a bit entrepreneurial. So I went for it, applied for the job, got the job. And one of the first things that happened as I took over was a documentary called Pedigree Dogs Exposed came out. And this documentary was basically following people showing dogs at crufts and breeding dogs, and had compiled all the evidence to show that we had changed the way a number of dogs look to meet breed standards and were causing them huge health problems as a consequence. So both external health problems, as in, flat faces, bulging eyes, skin folds and things, but also internal, some sort of hereditary conditions, heart problems, higher potential of getting cancers, all of these sorts of things because of inbreeding and things. So it was quite a big deal at the time. I think it hit the mainstream press, like the Times and things covered it. And the Labour MP, who was the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group, which we call APGAW, said to me, oh, right, we need to do something on this. So we ran an inquiry, a cross-party inquiry, which basically meant I wrote to everyone, put it out to the sector and said, right, give me written evidence as to why you think this is a problem. Here's some questions I want you to answer. And then from about 300 submissions we got from leading experts, vets, breeders, members of the public, all sorts, I whittled it down and we brought people in to give evidence, oral evidence, to the parliamentary committee. And at the end of that, I wrote a report, and that report was called A Healthier Future for Pedigree Dogs. And it set out a number of recommendations, basically saying this is a huge welfare problem, actually. We've allowed it to happen, we've encouraged it to happen, and it's right under our nose. So we need to do something about it. Fast forward to 2022, just going into 2023. Every year I run a stream of programs, so we can look at all sorts of different things. At the moment, we've got a big project on enforcement, animal welfare enforcement. I'm about to release a report tomorrow on that. But I was looking at my work stream and I thought, dogs, where have we got to with dogs? Well, frankly, nowhere really, have we? It's got a lot worse. So because of influencer, because of trends, because no real action's been taken, more and more dogs are being bred of what we call extreme conformation, again, causing all these problems. And I thought, we've got to do something about this. This is just ridiculous. So I put together a parliamentary meeting, brought all the experts in again and said, what are we doing? Everyone agreed this is an absolute travesty. We can't believe we've got to this point. We've really let down dogs. And how have we let this happen right under our nose? There wasn't a real conclusion to that meeting apart from let's go and set up a working group and look at this again. And as people probably know, looking into politics and things, there's always an inquiry or a working group or something like that. And people want to see what's actually going to happen, what's going to make a difference. But I was working with someone called Professor Dan O'Neill, who works for the Royal Veterinary College at the time. And he showed me this presentation he had. And in the middle of this presentation, I saw this thing that I thought, hey, what's that? Tell me more about it. And it was what he was calling innate health. And innate health is basically saying a dog should be able to do what a dog needs to do. So it should be able to run, it should be able to play, it should be able to engage with other dogs, it should be able to eat, it should be able to sleep, and it should be able to breathe. It's all pretty fundamental stuff.
Basic, yeah.
Yeah. So I said to him, I think there's something in here, and we could talk about legislation all day long, but what we actually need to do is start explaining this issue to the public, because it's not their fault. They just think these dogs look like this and they're buying them because other people have got them. Actually, we've got to simplify this. Let's step away from the veterinary talk and find a way to make this understandable. And there born was the innate health concept, which we then made into a tool over the next year and a half to 2 years. And we've just launched it 2 weeks ago.
Yes. I was actually randomly having a conversation with somebody the other day because there was a video where they had all these pugs and people were playing with the pugs, and it was actually based in the States, so not in the UK, but it was a big group of pugs and everyone was saying, oh, I love pugs and pugs this and pugs that. Yeah. And I was thinking, actually, not that they shouldn't have a platform, but people don't realize by giving these dogs more exposure makes other people want them more, which just continues to fuel the cycle. And I was speaking to this lady and I was saying, like, these poor dogs can't even breathe. And she said, You've never owned a pug. I've got a pug and my pug breathes just fine. I thought to myself, "Oh, that's interesting. Is that a case then of some breeds have issues and some breeds don't, but some dogs within those breeds, so not everyone?" But it turns out that actually with pugs or brachycephalic dogs, they by default can't breathe properly.
Yeah. So, I mean, the issue on that basically. So, first of all, the IHA wasn't made to be about breeds. It was made to be about making sure no animal suffers. So, I don't care what the breed is, every animal should be able to do those functions that I outlined earlier. But the problem is, people have got very normalised to heavy breathing or their dog not doing anything, actually. If you took a pug for a run, I bet you it'd be like that,
Yeah.
just, you know, as you go down the road, whereas a dog should be able to run for quite a distance, actually, without getting too out of breath. You get these things on Instagram where the dog's snoring or making funny noises, and people think that's really amusing. And there's lots of content saying, "How I listen to my dog's breathing, isn't it funny?" It's not. It's a sign of
No.
struggling, and most brachycephalic dogs are going to have that problem. This doesn't mean you can't have pugs. And if you go on the IHA website, you'll see a beautiful photo that shows a pug as it is today and a pug how it could be in 2 years' time if you just lengthened its nose a bit, if you just got rid of some of the skin folds, if you just allowed the tail to extend a bit more so you weren't hurting the dog's back. Simple things that we think you could change within 1 to 2 generations of a pug, actually. So you're not talking about anything insurmountable at all. And we're not saying people can't have pugs, but the way that a lot of pugs, there might be exceptions. She might have a pug that's got a longer snout and is doing okay. But on the whole, most of them will be struggling, even if you can't see it, you know, straight away.
Yeah. Well, it's the normalization of it, isn't it? That people just kind of assume that that is what the breed sounds like. That is what those types of dogs, that's just what they look
They
like.
should be silent at breath. I can't hear my Labrador breathing at all unless she's been for a massive run, really
Uh-huh.
pounding it. She'll come back panting. But it's the same as a human, you know. If I can't hear you breathing, you can't hear me breathing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Who is this tool for? Is it for breeders or is it for
Yeah.
everyday people?
So we're just amending the website as it at the moment, actually. So we've got 2 versions of the tool. One that's just for puppy buyers, for the public to either check their dog or a puppy they're buying really fast without having to put any information in about microchips or addresses or anything like that. So we're saying to puppy buyers, if you want a dog that you know you're not going to spend fortunes of vet bills on, and we can touch on that in a moment because the evidence is clear, these dogs with extreme conformation will cost you a lot of money at the vet. And we're seeing huge amounts of them being abandoned, relinquished because of that, and ending up in Battersea and Dogs Trust and the RSPCA. If you don't want the heartbreak of that in your family and the cost, then use the tool for the dog you are about to buy. Use it on the breeding bitch or the sire. Use it on the puppies. You know, go through it quickly, and that will give you a good indication of whether you're buying an innately healthy dog. But we are also doing a version for breeders to say, actually, you need to check before you breed from the animals that you're breeding from, that they can pass this IHA. If they don't pass it, you should not be breeding from them. And, you know,
Yeah.
doing so, you're exacerbating the problem and sending it into the future again.
Well, shouldn't breeders technically already know that?
Slightly cloudy. There is some legislation, we call it LIA, Licensing of Animal Activities, and it says that if you're breeding commercially or over 3 litters, you need a license. And to get a license, an inspector comes out, and within the regulation, it says that you shouldn't be breeding from dogs that have these kind of conditions, but no one's enforcing that because they don't understand how to measure it. Before the Innate Health tool, it was like, well, what extreme conditions? Where do I stop? Where do I begin? I don't know. I'm a local authority inspector who's been doing the taxis down the road or the feed establishment. And here I am in front of a dog going, should I breed from it or not? So there was no way of really pinning it down. Whereas now we can say to local authority inspectors, you can use the tool, and that gives you a baseline and something to enforce on. So we have got that. Fortunately, when it comes to breeding, the market is very, very cloudy. So you have your small segment of licensed commercial breeders who are doing the right thing, getting a license. Then you've got what you call your hobby breeders, who just say, I'm just having a one-off litter as a hobby. And I would question that, because most dogs, if you're breeding one of the dogs that has extreme conformation, you're probably selling them for £600 to £800. So you're going over the £1,000 tax threshold where you have to start doing tax returns anyway. So you therefore probably are commercial. And if you're advertising them on any platform, you are considered commercial as well. So you should have a license, but they're not. And the local authority guys have not got time to go out looking for these people. And then you've got all of the importers. We just had the ban on the imports of puppies bill go through Parliament last week. But nonetheless, there still will be black market of that. There's people that are bringing puppies in, saying they're pets or whatever, or bitches that are due to have puppies and things and bringing them in and selling them. There's a lot of dodgy people out there who are tricking decent people into buying dogs that come from Eastern European puppy farms, basically of really low welfare, and they will be possibly riddled with disease and certainly extreme conformation. So we need to clear up the whole sort of environment around breeding and puppy buying. We need to make it easy for people who are doing what we believe is the right thing, which is largely home breeders who are doing it in the right way, socialising those puppies, looking after them. We need to make it really, really difficult for people who are doing backyard breeding, importing, all of those sorts of things. And it's the public who lose out at the end of the day because they get a puppy. I've just had a builder actually working on the house, and he said he was getting a puppy. I was like, eye roll, okay, he'd already got it, so I couldn't give him a lecture about it. A week later, he comes back and said, oh, we've given it back to the breeder. It was really sick. It just wasn't, something wrong with it. The kids are now crying their eyes out and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and what's going to happen to that puppy? Is the breeder, I don't know how ethical that breeder is. Is she going to euthanize the dog? Is she going to look after it? Is she going to sell it again? What's going to happen to it?
Absolutely, 100%. So for if you don't mind, my understanding, this is a slight sidestep to the tool itself, but just how does Parliament work in terms of specifically focusing on dogs? Like, who is responsible? Who puts things forward?
Yeah.
Like what are their priorities at the moment?
So the APGAW, the parliamentary group, starts by raising an issue. So it gets its grassroots there where we say, oh, this isn't working because of ... And then we pressurise government to do something about it. But government can also set its own agenda as well and say, this is an issue. So dangerous dogs, for example, they banned some breeds last year, the XL bullies, because of the attacks. That was a public safety issue. So they moved on that. It depends what the government wants to do and how much energy it's got to do something. We are due to have what's called an animal welfare strategy published on the 22nd of December by government, setting out the pathway for what they will do on animal welfare. And it sits within the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Animal welfare and health falls under them. So they will decide what to do. Sometimes you can bypass them. You can go to an MP directly and get them to do what's called a private members bill, where they say, we want to ban whatever kind of breeding, and they get enough support so they can take it past government. But you normally have to have some government support to do that. If the government were really against it, they'd stop it happening. But basically, you have to build pressure. We're fighting amongst a million other issues, children's services, people who have business interests, food strategies, climate change, on and on. There's so many different things the government will be prioritising in only a limited amount of legislative time. So it's how hard you campaign, how much noise you make, and how easy you get the solution to look like. So we tend to, at APGAW, for example, we tend to do the oven ready stuff. We literally draft the bill for them, show them through polling how much support there is for it, and kind of say it's a win-win. Just do it because it's easy. But dog breeding, they will be sensitive about. They won't want to sort of charge into that because they see it as a kind of infringement on people's freedom to just go out and get a dog and,
Well, that doesn't really take away their freedom to go out and get a dog. It just makes the entire process a bit more ethical and considerate of dogs.
And protects them, potentially, not even potentially, it will protect them. We're asking, for example, that there should be a registration system of anyone who breeds a dog. They just register with the local authority and it goes on a system. So they have a registration number. So they are a real and legitimate person. And, within that registration thing, there can be a duty to abide by the law that the government have set. And if the local authority people want to check up on them or something, or they think there's something suspicious, they can, because at least they know who they are. I don't think that's too heavy-handed at all, but, it's getting government to agree to something like that.
Yeah. You were saying about raising an issue, and the government can also raise their own issue. But for you to raise an issue, how do you become aware of what the issues are?
So normally, I've been in the sector long enough, and I run lots of different groups, the Canine and Feline sector group, the local government group, and I'm involved in lots of other sort of different welfare groups. So I will hear on the grapevine or during my conversations with people what they're working on, what the trends they're seeing. So if a rescue is kind of saying, we're seeing this massive spike in dogs that have got this, use, or the equine sector says we're seeing a massive use in how people are treating horses, whatever it is, you can start to spot the trends. So, for example, someone's emailed me today saying, hey, you know, your IHA, we're actually seeing a big problem with that in exotic pets as well. People are breeding exotic pets in all sorts of ways that's leading to early fatality and welfare issues. So now I'm sort of looking at the exotic side going, okay, what's happening with there? Cats, we know that cats are starting to experience extreme conformation as well. So we're seeing lots of trends starting to spike there. The cats protection stats are showing more people are buying pedigree cats now than they are moggies. So you start to see all these trends just by being in touch with the organisations that are collecting data and statistics and seeing the gaps, really.
So if a regular layman such as myself, felt really strongly, passionately about an issue, and there doesn't seem to be anything, happening around that area, how can regular citizens bring that to your attention?
So they can write to what the best thing to do is write to their MP and copy APGAW in, copy me in, saying this is an issue and I want you as my MP to take it seriously, and APGAW to potentially consider it. And then we would put it on our work plan to have a look at it, or it might be something more simple, like we just write to the Secretary of State, the relevant minister, and say, here's a problem here. There's different fixes to different things. So what we've done that's quite interesting in APGAW is we've taken the route that legislation isn't the only fix. Actually, there's a lot that can be done within the sector itself, within business, within breeders, within the public, and things that can improve welfare. So how do we work outside Parliament as well as inside? So if a member of the public raises anything, we just look at our kind of toolkit and say, okay, yeah, we think that is an issue. Let's take a bit of action on that. Or if it's a really significant issue, we'll run an inquiry and do a long piece of work on it. Okay. So it really depends. But the public, MPs will listen more than they've ever listened, because the last election has shown us nobody's really got a safe seat anymore. So politicians, one minute to another, as the polls are changing, this is happening. People are switching their allegiances from voting. No one's sticking to one party now. So they're jumping around. And that means politicians have to react to the public and try and stay in their good books. So for anyone who does really care about something, just go straight to your MP and say, this is an issue and I want to know what you're doing about it.
Well, I've thought about that before, because I remember when the petition was going round about animal testing specifically, I emailed my local MP and I didn't hear back for a long time. Thankfully, he did. But I was thinking, what if you're emailing an MP that isn't interested? They're not a dog person, they're not going to connect with what you're trying to achieve.
That happens. I mean, like every job, there's good and bad, isn't there? I mean, I personally think all MPs, it's not even them answering, it's their team of staff. So there's absolutely no excuse for them not responding to a constituent that makes contact. But I would go straight out and put on social media, I've written to my MP about this issue, it's something I care about, and they haven't been bothered coming back to me, because the arena now of social media and making a noise is highly impactful. But you can also go to the charities and find ways of supporting their campaigns. There are charities that do things that will instruct you how to write to your MP in a way that gets their attention, how to sort of galvanise action. On the animal experimentation one, there's Animal Research UK and PETA and those organisations doing things. On the dog stuff, there's Battersea and Dogs Trust and Kennel Club all raising these issues, so they can help you. That's their job to help. But ultimately, if it's something you care about as a member of the public, the MP needs to respond and give you a view on it. And even if they're not interested in it, it's not up to them to only lobby for things they're interested in. They're there to represent the public.
Interesting.
Be tenacious, basically, and annoying.
Be annoying. I can do that. I was just wondering, this is again going behind the scenes, the things that regular people wouldn't have, knowledge of. I wouldn't know. There was a petition that went round, is still going round, but someone sent it to me yesterday, and it was about banning all aversives. Someone else then reached out to me after I posted it on my stories, asking people to sign the petition, and they said it's not going to go through, it's not specific enough, because aversives could be anything, right? And I thought that was really interesting. Like, all this energy and effort goes into a non-starter, really, if you think about it. So what kind of things can we do to ensure that we kind of give ourselves the best opportunity to affect change through things like petitions?
So trust the experts. So what I've learned a lot is everyone thinks they can understand how legislation and policy formation works, and they don't. It's like any job, you have to learn the craft of it. Now, anyone can contact their MP, anyone can campaign, anyone can care about an issue and make a difference. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that's true, but the actual mechanisms of policy are more complicated than that. So what I'd say, and I'm not advocating for any big charities here, give your donations to small charities, volunteer for small charities, but the big charities tend to know how to affect policy in the best way possible. So it's always worth having a look. If there's an issue about dog training or something, it's always worth contacting, say, Dogs Trust or something, to say, what are you doing about this? What's your line on it? And you might find they've already got something and they are working on it already, and they will probably be taking the right lines because they understand, they're pretty expert at understanding policy and how to influence government. Sometimes it's not impossible that some really random campaign that seems quite niche can get through and have an impact. It has been done by people in the past, but on the whole, it's not how government works. It needs to be a policy that's constructed that fits into their kind of environment. Their policy environment is actually doable, is manageable, isn't going to drain a load of resource. There's loads of things we'd all want that just cannot actually work in practice. For example, the legislation just couldn't do it, doesn't exist, and it would take too long to get it done. So I would always say, look for the experts, choose your kind of key people, and don't get carried away down some strange pathway by someone that's just trying to probably gather social media likes or following or donations or something like that. Just be careful.
Yeah. That's super helpful. Thank you so much. These things can take a long time, right?
They
And
do.
there's so many different issues to get behind. It's really hard sometimes to know where one's energy should go. But what's clear from what you've just shared with me is to do as much of the legwork up front and really think about it. You could almost liken it to a business plan.
It's exactly that. So let's go back to the IHA for a moment. The government haven't said they'll take the IHA on, and they haven't done anything about string confirmation apart from that tiny note in the LIA regs in 2018. And we've all been asking for this for years. It's been 16 years of asking for something. So we've decided just to bypass government. We're going to come up with something, show it works, show it's popular, and then government can run and catch us up. So there is something for just sort of getting on, thinking of the solution and getting on with delivering it in whatever way as you would a business, and letting them come after you and sort of showing them how it works. There's many different ways to sort of come at policy change and legislative change. But at the end of the day, as you say, you set your plan and you have a sort of couple of routes for it. So with the IHA, our route is, let's get it out to the public. Let's get the public talking about extreme confirmation and understanding it in a really layperson way. And then the other strand is, we're going to work with the veterinary corporations and the local authority inspectors and schools and colleges and vet training places to get them to use the IHA. And then the third prong is, we will be annoying government saying, why aren't you doing this? This is your job. You should be doing this and protecting the welfare of animals. You say we're a world leading country. Prove it. Put this into legislation. This is how you do it. So you have your sort of various prongs going on when it comes to policy.
I love that. That's really strategic. How are you going to measure its effectiveness?
So the system's collecting data on dogs. It's not collecting data on the person, but it's collecting data on the dogs. So we can start to see the trends where dogs are failing, what the key extreme confirmations are coming through. So that allows us to get data, which then allows us to share that data potentially with insurance companies and things like that to get a better understanding. And then you start to create an environment where you get a certain dog. Well, actually, your insurance premium is going to be higher because it's going to cost you more money at the vet. The insurance company is going to have to factor that in, and you start drilling down on all of that and saying to the public, this is why it's a problem. It's not just a problem for the welfare of the dog, it's a problem for your welfare as well and your wallet. So we'll be driving all of that through. So we've got sort of different ways to take it through, but also we will be collecting data, doing analysis as we go through and sort of assessing its effectiveness, asking for feedback. We ran two comprehensive pilots before we launched it, and we will then do those pilots again to say what needs changing, what's sort of failing here, and just listening to feedback. Now, the IHA is not a perfect solution, don't get me wrong. When we first did it, we had a list of 25 criteria that were all serious and problematic. And actually, there's more than that. There's a lot more than 25. We've whittled it down to 10 because we didn't want to overwhelm the public. We've whittled it down to the 10 that are the most common and have the most impact. We have got the evidence. This is all done off the back of years and years of veterinary data coming into Veterinary Compass, which sits under the Royal Veterinary College. So we know these are issues. People have challenged us and said, why did you pick these 10? Because the data supports it, the science supports it. But there's lots of other criteria, and we could review that as we go forward and say, should more be added to it? Should less? How do we need to amend and change this? And we're also open to the fact that there are other solutions that need to take place as well. There's all sorts of other assessments. There's veterinary involvement in different spaces. The Kennel Club are doing their own kind of form of innate health assessment now. There'll be lots of other stuff going on. Really, we're very much at the early days, and we had a meeting today to sort of say, the thing about this kind of project is how much energy you've got to carry on driving it. And we've done this pretty much pro bono. The team who's worked on it, we haven't been paid for it. We've had to put a huge amount of time into getting where it's got to already. And we were sort of saying, how much more energy have we got? Because if we just leave it, it will just sort of float along. It'll be okay. People will use it. We've had 1,000 people try it so far in the 2 weeks, which is great. But when does it start to sort of lose its profile? So we've come up with a strategy next year of all the key moments when we've got an opportunity. I mean, Christmas is an opportunity as well. People are going out getting puppies. So we're sort of mapping our opportunities to keep pushing it forward. And the more people that use it, the more chance we've got of measuring its success, basically, and understanding from the data how it's working and what we can do with it. So all we're encouraging people to do is go and use it. Don't worry about not putting your microchip number in. Use a false name if you want. Just try and be honest about the dog. Take the dog through and see how it comes out. And the IHA website at the end tells you exactly what you should do if your dog has failed or failed on any of the criteria. We're not just leaving you hanging. We can support you in looking after your dog. We're not here to demonise any dogs or any owners.
Yeah. We haven't really touched on it too much, but what are some of the criteria?
Yeah. So basically it's nose length. So we ask people to assess the length of the dog's muzzle. We ask them to look at the skin folds on their dog. We ask them to look at the tail length, the leg length. We give them measurements from shoulder to foot. Bulging eyes, showing of the whites of the eyes around the the brown, the coloured bit. Teeth alignment, things that you can look at the dog quite quickly and assess. Merle colouring, because merle colouring is linked to a high prevalence of deafness in dogs. So yeah, all things that people can visibly see. Straight legs, you see a lot of dogs with really bowed legs. That's linked to huge welfare problems. The sort of straightness of the legs is one of them. All things that you can look at. And when we did the pilots and tested this, people were able to undertake the IHA in less than 2 minutes and take their dog through it. So it's all really clear, obvious things. And there might be people listening who kind of go, well, my dog's Merle. I don't, what a load of rubbish. My dog's fine. Your dog might be. But as I said, the science is showing that the majority of Merle dogs are not. Okay. Within the IHA, it's 10 criteria, but you can fail 2 of them and still pass, because we're giving that wriggle room at the moment to, again, not be too oppressive and not to scare people off. We want them to use this and understand. And if their dog fails any of them, at least they can walk away and think about what that means in their future decisions.
Mm-hmm.
What I want in the future is people to go, I can't believe you got a dog with a nose like that. It's so cruel. That's quite a strong thing to say, but that's a sort of 10-year project or something. We need social movement to change this more than anything, more than legislation.
100%. What is the vision here? What does utopia look like from a dog's perspective?
Well, utopia, I mean, it's sort of going back in history, back to how dogs used to look in a way. But it is basically eliminating those extreme conformations so that we know every dog has a chance of having a good life. We might not be able to stop it getting cancer. We might not be able to stop it getting run over by a car, but we're giving it the best chance of having a good, pain-free life without suffering. And I think that I think everyone would support that. I think every member of the public would want that. We got a really good coverage in the Telegraph on the day we launched. The profile was really, really good, very enthusiastic. But actually, I went straight to the comments to see what people were saying, because I expected them to be saying there's nothing wrong with my bulldog or there's nothing wrong with my whatever. But actually the public seemed to get it, and they were all like, I can't believe we've done this. This is a disgrace. We must stop it. This is terrible. My friend's got a dog that can't breathe. I see it panting or drooling everywhere or staggering down the pavement and things. People don't want this. People love dogs. We all love dogs. And it might just be that we haven't understood what that extreme conformation does to our dog. It might be that it's got a minor level of it, but it's still a level that we should be getting rid of. So the future looks like getting rid of those 10 extreme conformations that are in the criteria and then moving on to the other ones and gradually eliminating them all until every dog bred is healthy, has got a chance of being healthy.
Amazing. So, what's supposed to be happening? Let's say, for example, I'm interested in buying a puppy. I go to the breeder, I see the puppy, she doesn't meet the criteria of the assessment. What happens then to that puppy? Do I just, is the goal to let the
Well,
breeder know, nope, sorry, is this supposed to pressure them to do things the right way?
it's supposed to change the market demand, which means the breeders will breed better dogs to keep their businesses going. There is a short-term risk of people sort of going to see puppies and saying, no, we don't want them. And what happens to those puppies? Of course there is. We've sort of factored that in, and we've had conversations with the rescue charities and things about what that could look like, but we don't see it as a huge risk. We're not talking about massive numbers, and the IHA is going to be quite slow to sort of move in. We are saying again, I mean, at the end of the day, if they're breeding their dog and selling it and you're going to look at it, they should have been licensed and they should have been meeting the legislation under LIA, which includes the point that they shouldn't be breeding dogs like that. So for us to kind of just say we can't do anything about this because of those dogs being bred right now, which might not be homed potentially because people say, oh, they've got extreme conformation, I can't have them, which, as I said, I don't think will happen in that many cases at the moment. This is a slow build up. We can't stop trying to change the future for other dogs coming forth. We've got to get hold of this. And I think that's been one of the issues. People have been too scared to tackle this because it's like, oh, what if we upset the breeders? What if we upset the breed clubs? What if we end up with dogs that can't find homes because they've got extreme conformation? But we're just creating this never-ending cycle of breeding these dogs, so we have to grasp that and tackle it. And our partners on this, we've been supported by Battersea and Blue Cross and RSPCA and PDSA and all of those charities who supported us, and we've worked through those issues.
I saw also that there was a collaboration with a company called Pet Proof,
Yeah.
and I looked into them. It's the first time I'd heard of them, and I thought it was a really interesting concept. What was their involvement within this project?
So Pet Proof had come about because the two people who run it, Kate and Gary, are tech experts. Kate had been ripped off by a person who sold her a puppy that didn't exist. So fraud, basically. And that happens a lot. I think it's like 1 out of 5 puppies doesn't actually exist that gets sold or something. So a lot of people are being ripped off. So they set up this company that basically said they would register breeders and make sure they were verified and legitimate people. So you weren't sort of dealing with someone who didn't exist or someone who was hiding behind a facade or something. They came to APGAW and the Canine and Feline sector group to help build support for what they were trying to do. And as we were talking, the APGAW and Dan O'Neill, we were sort of talking about what to do with the Innate Health Assessment. We'd designed these criteria, we'd come up with this scheme, but we were like, now what do we do with it? Because at the end of the day, it's just a website with some words on it again. How are we going to get people to understand this? We need a mechanism to deliver it. And we got chatting to them and they were like, well, that's what we do. Why don't we build a website and put the tool on it? So it was serendipity, really, that we came across people who could do this at the right time, who for their long-term business interests, they did a lot of work pro bono, but for their long-term aims as well, it sort of ticks the boxes for them. So they designed their whole tool. They run the tool and it makes sure that it's all compliant, GDPR, it's secure, the data's protected, and we've got the ability to analyse it through them. So it's been really, really fortunate to come across them.
That is, it sounds like a match made in heaven,
It
really.
was.
Is that
Yeah.
tool integrated within their own platform now as well?
They've got it on their own platform as well, but only the tool. And we would say to that, I mean, that's fine for people who are just going into the tool, but actually the APGAW IHA site sort of sets out what we're trying to achieve and how it was built and gives you all the information. So if you fail the IHA or you have issues, there's resources on there to understand more about it. So we're really trying to encourage people to use the tool within the IHA website itself so they can get all of those extra benefits from it.
Sounds good. What do you think it says about us that we've reached this point? Us as a society, as a culture, as individuals?
I mean, it's just so interesting, isn't it? I've worked on animal welfare for a long time. And as I said at the beginning of the podcast, this is a big, huge welfare problem right under our nose. There's between 10, 11 million dogs in the UK. Not all of them have extreme conformation. It's a percentage of them. Farm animals, you're talking about millions of animals. So that's obviously a big welfare issue. But companion animals, we pride ourselves as being really high welfare and looking after our pets really well and being a nation of animal lovers. But we've let this kind of secret, unwanted thing enter our homes and it's right there and we've accepted it's completely normal and we've taken an animal and changed the way it looks to suit our needs. our vision of what they should look like, which I think is really horrible. I think it's pretty terrible, actually, that we've allowed that to happen. I'm not saying it's anyone's fault in this existence. It's something that's crept in over time. Lots of people have either turned a blind eye or just thought it was the right thing to do, accidentally. Who knows? There'll be lots of reasons for it, but it is quite terrible to the most loved animal. I think dogs probably are up there as the most loved animals. I'm sure cats will try and rival them, but I think dogs are, that we've allowed this to happen, and it's been a deliberate thing we've done. So we have to change it. It's a moral duty of us to return dogs to how they should be.
Absolutely. Just thinking about social media, how much of an impact do you think that has on the normalization of what we
Massive.
would deem as normal?
Yeah, I mean, it's got a massive impact, because the trends we have seen over the last 5 to 6, 7 years have been celebrity led, by having sort of pocket dogs, handbag dogs, whatever you call them, pocket dogs. They'd be really small to do that, but handbag dogs and dogs with extreme conformation, and showing them sort of snorting and snoring when they're breathing, or slobbering everywhere, or sort of staggering down the road as a kind of way to get more likes and following and things. It's just become really normal. So it's had a massive impact. But on the plus side, it also gives us a platform to be able to talk about the other stuff. We've got our social media platforms as well, which we will start to use more and more going into the new year. So we've got an opportunity as well to talk about this issue. But it's certainly driven it a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility on what people have been showing others on social media, and people have been sort of saying, I've got to have that dog because so-and-so's got it. And there's whole platforms, there's whole influencers that just do things on a certain dog, like pugs or something, and they have sort of 200 followers just to sort of see them dressing their pugs up or sitting with their pugs or something. So people are interested in this stuff.
People really are. I don't know if it's seen as a kind of subconscious, like entertainment. And then what happens is repeated exposure actually normalizes that thing, not realizing that it was totally abnormal. I think it's the same thing with these kind of cruel videos where something happens to the dog and people think it's funny, and that becomes normalized because it's entertainment value rather than considering the dog's experience within that. I think like shifting a culture, and that's especially what this podcast hopes to achieve in the long run, is to
Yeah.
get people to think about the dog's experience within that.
This is the thing. We're all guilty of that. I mean, I kiss my dog and she probably hates it. She probably thinks, what the hell are you doing all the time? I just can't resist it, but I probably annoy her doing that. I mean, we put our own feelings and thoughts onto our dogs, don't we? Really?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I catch myself doing these things all day, every day, but it's having the ability to have that self-awareness and to just consider for a moment what the other's experience is within this very restrictive human world.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that. And it's
Yeah.
exactly that. So, yeah, I mean, I just think we love our dogs. They are part of our family, and you wouldn't want a member of your family to be suffering or having severe difficulty doing everything on a daily basis, would you? Just because of the way we as humans have chosen to breed them.
Do you think if dogs could speak directly to us about the bodies that we've bred for them, what do you think they would ask for?
So the most important thing for a dog is understanding its natural behaviour. It's the same with horses, for example. Horses are flight animals. They don't want to be sort of cooped up. They want to be able to move around all day. And we've put horses in fields and they can't sort of have that movement as well. So it's not just dogs. But as I say, with dogs, we've kind of decided that they need to fit into our lifestyles completely, whether it is staying in a crate all day whilst we go to work, or not getting the walk because we don't want to go for the walk, or being on a sofa with us. People feed their dogs human food, all sorts of things, feeling that they're part of the family. I think dogs would just simply say, I want to be able to do what a dog does. Dogs like to socialise. And there's huge evidence that shows because of extreme conformation, they can't socialise properly, which is affecting their behaviour. That's a massive thing. That's like being the bullied kid in school. Every time you go out, every dog has a go at you or tries to sort of attack you or just ignores you because of the way you look. So dogs want to be happy. They want to perform their natural behaviour. They like to run. They like to snuggle up. They want to be able to wash themselves, including their back ends. And if they can't bend their spine because of that, that is horrendous for them. That's really frustrating. All the things you and I naturally want to do, a dog wants to be able to do what they can naturally do as well. So that's all they'd ask for. They'd say, just make sure I can do what I need to do, that I can breathe, that I can run, that I can play, that I can eat.
All the basics. Tick, tick, tick,
Yeah.
tick, tick.
Yeah. Yeah.
One last thing. What keeps you up at night? As in, like within the dog world, what's the next thing or the thing that you've still feel passionately about that's unresolved?
Internationally, there's the international issues of the fact that we still have dog meat trades and things like that, which I just think so abhorrent and awful. We're sort of limited what we can do from here, lecturing to other countries what they can and can't do. But, we've got to try because it's just absolutely horrendous. And I guess the current sort of situation is the relinquishment of pets and things that's happening at the moment. The numbers are really spiking because of cost of living and things. And I think that's something that we've got to think about how we help. Vets bills, for example, there's a Competition Market Authority analysis of that going on at the moment because a lot of people are being priced out of the veterinary treatment, and that's only likely to get worse, I think, with cost of living. People leaving their dogs suffering because they can't afford to go to the vet and things. How do we tackle that? It's really difficult.
Really, really difficult. Just as a quick example, I took my dog to have her nails clipped. And I know it's not the vet, say vet, but I'm talking about the business, not the actual vet. And she was there for all of 5 minutes, had 6 nails clipped because the rest were, short enough. And it was £36.
Oh.
Then I went down the road on a walk earlier this week. And I just saw another, and I thought, oh, let me just go check. Maybe they're cheaper and then I can just go swap vets. They were £41.50 for a nail clipping.
Which means everyone will do it at home and forget about the nerves that are in dogs' claws, and dogs will end up getting their poor nerves cut left, right and centre. Not because the owners are doing anything mean, but just because they think, oh, I have to do it myself. So that, I think the veterinary issue is a really problematic one because vets are struggling. Vets are sort of saying they're suffering from mental health. There's a lot of vets who don't want to work in everyday practices because it's really hard. Euthanizing dogs, seeing people come in with, dogs of extreme conformation that they can't sort of tell them anything about because they're not there to give them a lecture.
Yeah.
They've got all these challenges facing them, but then people can't afford to keep paying more. It costs a fortune. So that's a really complex one because I don't see how legislations, you can't say to the veterinary sort of services, you can only charge this amount of money. You need like schemes, but a lot of the charities are pulling back on free veterinary. They often have programs for free veterinary help. And because of the NI increases last year, they're letting go of staff and they're cutting back. And a number of them have said we won't be offering free veterinary consultations anymore. So if you're on low income or you're pensioner or something who's relying on your pet for company and well-being, mental health, all of those sorts of things, it's really difficult. People will just be Googling and using AI to treat their dogs, and that could have really serious consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Just out of interest, who would I speak to more about this? Because this is a topic that absolutely fascinates me. I would love to know more about because it's a consumer protection thing as well, isn't it? I don't have beef with vets. I understand the problem for them, but as a business model, something's got to give.
Yeah. So, there's an organisation called the British Veterinary Association that kind of represent vets and are there to speak to these sorts of issues. They are looking, and I expect it will be announced in that animal welfare strategy that I mentioned coming out on the 22nd of December, at amending the Veterinary Surgeons Act to allow more paraprofessionals, so veterinary nurses and things, to be recognised and able to perform some of the treatments, which could reduce the price a bit from using a vet because we have a shortage of vets in the UK. So there's sort of things going on there. We, APGAW, will probably hold a meeting on it next year to try and address this issue because it has been raised of us a few times of what is going to happen. There will be huge parts of the UK where you have high deprivation and people will not be able to access veterinary treatment. So I expect we will talk about it as well at some point. But yeah, probably the British Veterinary Association would be the main organisation to say, what are you going to do about that? At the moment, they're dealing with the CMA consequences that have come out of there. Somebody's saying to me today in Sweden, they've got an interesting model where you have to go to the pharmacy and get your veterinary medication and take it to the vet. So the vet isn't allowed to sell you veterinary medication because the vet practice as if it's a corporation, could potentially make much bigger markups on there. So if they put it with the pharmacy, you get it for like human medicines without sort of huge markups and making it too commercial. And I wondered, was that a sort of way of dealing with things and being able to get access to veterinary medicine? But then using your own veterinary medicine without a vet there would be also problematic in many ways.
Very, yeah. It's a fascinating topic and super, super complex. Really enjoyed this. So much to think about. And thank you so much for everything that you do for dogs and for humans.
No problem. Thanks for speaking to me.